A politician should not be an entrepreneur. There's this idea that entrepreneurs should go into politics, supposedly because they know how things work.
The thing is, entrepreneurs are deal makers. They're driven by the principle of material gain and money. And if we look at a deal maker, there's a high chance he'll create a state system that works for his own benefit.
Of course, we replicate everything outward after our own likeness.
That's why, if someone is a good entrepreneur, you can put him, for example, in charge of a riding club in that region or the administration of that district, where he'll build infrastructure, but he won't be a politician. He'll be an official who sets up an efficient system for things like garbage collection, or he'll handle paving roads, lighting, landscaping, or allocating schools, kindergartens, clinics, stadiums, parks. So it's all created with structure and harmony. An entrepreneur naturally accounts for a variety of factors, so as a systems thinker, he'll create conditions where everything gets done properly, and he'll be able to hire the right people to do it effectively. For instance, when Vilnius elected a new entrepreneur mayor, I can't recall his name at the moment, with the same budget, but instead of stealing it, he invested it effectively, knew how to allocate it properly, and hired the right people for specific tasks. He brought Kaunas, sorry for the slip, which means Vilnius will eventually get such a mayor too. And I'd say that since a person like that is already financially independent, but has a structured mindset, an inner sense and backbone, he does it in a way for himself already, because a true entrepreneur is someone who creates comfortable living conditions in his own home, his company, his street, his city, his country, whereas there are those who focus on tax avoidance, offshore schemes, hiding money. Those should never go into politics because they'll keep doing the same thing there.
Will the widespread adoption of digital money lead to a situation where no one can avoid paying taxes?
Let's talk about the near future and also what this might bring in 100, 200, 300 years.
Both the near and the distant future.
If we're talking about now, distortions are inevitable. We can clearly see what's happening in China with their attempt to digitize everything and everyone. And since the Communist Party is in charge, meaning a totalitarian regime where power is above all else, where only power is seen as effective when they force people through fear and restriction to live for the ones at the top, where does that lead? To simple things. The complete collapse and disappearance of such a state, and sadly, maybe even entire peoples. So, digital money and digital technologies, if used without love, will quickly boomerang back to those who launched them. And for every person who either rages against this system or supports it, that boomerang will find its way. That's why we need to practice gratitude, wish love, envision what we want, declare intentions of how we see it, but most importantly, kindness has to remain inside. Otherwise, we'll just take on those people's problems ourselves, leaving them fine while we'll be working through the consequences of their destructive actions. And I can say that when we face someone acting improperly, immorally, harshly, or rudely, and we respond with aggression and emotional judgment, we'll either end up carrying that person's karma or eventually become like them. Unfortunately, people don't learn from examples because to kill the dragon is to become the dragon. That law has always worked. When we hate villains, the moment we destroy them, we ourselves become even bigger villains who just moments ago seemed to be fighting for justice. Every totalitarian regime starts with the good ones gathering to slaughter the bad ones with exceptional cruelty.
So, digital money seems pretty clear. We already talked a lot about it last time.
Digital money is a very good thing.
Yes, you said it's very good. And it's especially good to use it in the area of taxes, where everything is transparent.
You can track exactly where your money went, who received it, how and what was purchased with the taxes you personally paid.
Should the state provide free healthcare and education for the taxes we pay? And in general, how do you see what the state owes us for our taxes?
Let's start with the fact that the state is a community of people. And for a community of people, it's beneficial when the best people do the best things for everyone. That's why if the state creates conditions and supports those who excel in medicine, science, creativity, culture, and education, then the state will also pay these people, motivating them to nurture their talent and apply it as effectively as possible for society.
If people use tricks to pay less in taxes, does it worsen their karma? I mean, we're not talking about offshore zones now, but when a person pays taxes and then says, no, this is too much, I feel like I can't anymore.
Let's talk.
Meaning up to a certain point. He just...
about the concept of karma. We can't work off karma. Karma cannot be worked off.
It worsens.
Although there is such a thing as territorial karma.
Does he make things worse for himself?
A human being is like a computer. It all depends on what software is in that computer, on the power of that computer. Because we might install programs that won't run because they require a much more powerful processor. So we should say it all depends on a person's beliefs. If we take the Bible, it clearly says no law, no sin. Created a law, created the possibility to sin against it. How does that work? If someone deceives us, betrays us, treats us badly, and we condemn them, then automatically, if we deceive someone or treat someone badly, we'll get hit with the karma of our own law. That's why if we remain emotionally calm when we're deceived, hurt, or treated unfairly, meaning we don't connect beliefs that trigger emotions and generate that karma, then we don't accumulate it. Because when we say we're working off the karma of our ancestors with sati, we're not working off the karma of our ancestors, we're working off the karma of their beliefs. So if we don't use our ancestors' beliefs, we will never work off their karma, not even a hair's worth. In other words, don't use the beliefs your ancestors lived by, and you'll never have to pay for them. At the same time, judge not, lest ye be judged. The way you measure others is exactly how you'll be measured. It's that simple.
But if we're already talking in biblical quotes, doesn't it mean if someone strikes you on one cheek, turn the other?
In reality, no one can hit us on the cheek unless our subconscious provoked them to. Because if we live in love, we're loved. If we live in hatred, we're hated. If we live in resentment, we're hurt. If we're attached to money is taken from us, never think, poor guy, he's having such a hard time. All his troubles were created by his thinking, his emotions, and his actions. Period. And often a person may look good in society's eyes, but the thoughts in his head can create such a hell in his life that everyone will say, strange, he didn't do anything bad. But everyone forgets that thoughts are material. That's why no one will strike us on the cheek for one simple reason: if we live in love. But if we live in rightness, in judgment, and in rigid ideas of how it should be, then we'll get not only slapped on the cheek, but punched in the stomach and kicked in the backside. That's the point. So if a person is harmonious, he can deal with his taxes however he wants, but he cannot get emotional about whether they're high or low, legal or unfair. Truly not emotional, because calmness creates the condition for karma to reset, because karma is nothing but beliefs.
In a situation where, as you describe, the most important thing for us is not to react emotionally to something that seems unfair to us.
There is no injustice, there is justice.
I understand, but from our perspective.
That doesn't align with our laws, with our vision of how it should be. But if we lean on love, then everything is fair, because everyone measures according to the energy they use and the actions they take. And they receive payment for those actions, whether it's in money, love, or a slap in the face.
Okay. I just want to expand this topic because many could take your words literally and stop reacting emotionally. But instead of stepping into the observer's role, which would be amazing, because from that state of observer you can actually make decisions, they might go into a place of not making any decisions at all.
The question here is about energy.
So we emotionally agree with it, meaning we don't react emotionally.
We stay calm and act.
And act.
We can't just sit still. We always need to act.
But act how? By fighting?
Look,
We're not going into confrontation, are we?
we don't fight. We're not allowed to fight.
So what do?
We create the conditions the way we want them. The most important thing is we don't have the right to react emotionally to the system. Otherwise, the system will grow stronger from our emotions and the feedback loops will destroy us. We do what we feel is right, and we give thanks for every possible option. Like I've said before, people come to me and ask, should I have surgery? Well, all illnesses come from psychosomatics, and I tell them, if you're scared, anxious, worried, uneasy, go ahead with the surgery. If you feel calm, confident, and know deep down you can overcome your illness without surgery, then trust your calm and confidence. So you have to understand this clearly. If you realize that you still haven't worked through your emotions, like me, I haven't fully worked through mine yet. I still react to what seems like injustice, even though it is justice, because I haven't fully shifted into love, and I'm still stuck in rightness. Then for me, it's better to pay all the taxes. But a person who's calm and knows that everything comes from love and harmony, they just do what they feel is right, accept all the possible outcomes, and let things unfold as they will. That's it. So there's no perfect answer here. Everyone has to make their own decision. But
if you're not God, better pay your taxes.
my opinion is, until we've learned to have a healthy sense of indifference and really grasp that everything comes from God, whatever you need, God will give you. Money, a home, a car, a loving partner, health. Because you're radiating love and care, you're living in the state of man-woman, you've stopped clinging to things, and you're living for the ecological evolution of planet Earth.
At one of your webinars, you said, and people often remind you of this, that taxes should decrease as an entrepreneur's income grows, meaning not the way it is now. You said that, for example, there could be a flat tax of 15% for everyone, but over a certain period, let's say 10 years, a person could, through increasing the turnover of their company, their business, eventually reach a 5% tax. So over time, they'd be paying not more tax on income, but less. And many reacted as if that meant encouraging oligarchs.
It's not about encouraging oligarchs, because oligarchs are those who try to influence politics, but entrepreneurs. Why? Let's be concrete, okay?
Yes.
If a person somehow earned 1,000 euros or dollars, then they pay, let's say, $150 or euros from that amount. If they grew their business to the point where they earned $100,000 or euros, and we're talking about net profit, and they paid 5% on that, then tell me, how much would go to the state?
Well, yes, of course. It turns out the state in this case receives more than the person would have paid at 15% on a smaller income.
So 5% of 100,000, how much is that?
5,000.
So earlier he paid $150 or euros, and here he paid $5,000 or euros. How much richer did the state become? So we can encourage him, and the state will get 5,000 euros, while at the same time the person gets to use the money he has, and of course he'll be able to earn normally. But if you impose a progressive tax, most people lose the desire to make money at all. Because progressive taxation,
progressively increasing,
creates the effect that a person feels aggression toward the people and officials who are manipulating his work, meaning he's putting in more energy, taking on more risks, investing more money, taking on bigger loans, increasing volumes. The market can shift, conditions can change. If he only had 1,000 and lost it, no big deal. He goes bankrupt after 1,000. But when he invested millions and lost millions, nobody thinks about the fact that no business is 100% profitable all the time. Businesses need to be encouraged so they can grow. How? By motivating people to try, to take risks, to be curious, to want to change and improve something. And what pushes them in that direction is a progressive tax that decreases as they become more effective at making money. But instead, they are slapped on the hands and on the head. Because even if you suddenly invest or start doing something on a larger scale, sleeping less, doing more, organizing more, they'll still take much more from you, even if the return, which isn't that high, finally starts coming in.
Right, so it turns out that an entrepreneur who earns more uses all the social infrastructure And on top of that, he's also
providing jobs, creating products, improving infrastructure. Compare that to someone who just, figuratively speaking, shows up, works their hours and leaves, or someone who lives off subsidies and does nothing. And in my opinion, people who are perfectly healthy have no right to receive unemployment benefits. They should at least be doing something, trimming grass, helping the elderly, sweeping streets, cleaning trash in the forest. So one way or another, if they're healthy and able-bodied, they should be doing some kind of work for that money. And in addition, the state could create conditions for them to learn something useful. Otherwise, the state begins to degrade because it creates conditions where it's more profitable to sit at home than to work.
By the way, we discussed this topic before, and there was a question. Right now, it's common to split a business into smaller parts to pay fewer taxes. But if taxes on higher profits were lower, wouldn't entrepreneurs want to merge into one big business and then share that lower tax among themselves? And we concluded that they wouldn't, because if you introduce a system where a person tracks their own taxes
and can actually direct their taxes into the sphere
that interests them.
And if we also add that in the region where they pay taxes, part goes to the central budget, but the bigger part stays in the region, then it creates conditions where that money goes to theaters, education, medicine, and science in the region where they live.
So that a person could lobby for their own interests and feel like an investor of their taxes, then
yes.
They wouldn't go for...
And depending on how much tax they pay, they'd have influence over what kind of infrastructure gets developed more in the region where they live. And if someone doesn't like it, they can move to a region where the infrastructure develops the way they want.
So that becomes quite a constructive factor, encouraging...
And on top of that, a person personally...
toward conscience.
I think the rating of Person of the Year should be based on how much tax someone paid and what was actually done with the taxes they purposefully invested into a given sphere.
Let's sum up everything we've talked about today. Maybe you want to describe or add another picture of what taxation of the future could look like in a constructive sense that's coming to us.
Everything evolves in levels. Right now, we need to move toward a system that motivates every person to earn more money, and by doing so, pay fewer taxes, and then transition into a system where psychologists and people who cultivate a state of true love in each of us are at the top. And once the laws in the state are formed out of love, not fear, we'll see the main professions and specialties be maternity workers, caregivers, school teachers, university professors, researchers, politicians, and doctors. And of course, taxes would then be distributed in a completely different way. Some people might not pay taxes at all because they contribute so much value to the state. The state might even support them and indulge their interest within reason, and others might pay very high taxes, but only because they'd be essentially managing those taxes themselves and investing them into the structures and systems they want to see develop.
So what does the foreseeable future look like in this direction? What are your bets?
Well, let's dream a little. I'd like there to be in every country, for example, a party of love.
Politics of love.
Where people think constructively, notice the good, have a sense of humor, feel themselves as men and women, live and act for the benefit of planet Earth. And they don't judge, or they work on not judging or resenting when someone does something wrong, but instead think, speak, and act constructively in relation to those actions. They enjoy life themselves and interact harmoniously with the world around them, with people, and in the fields where they are professionals. And the more these kinds of people support those around them, the greater the chance the world will unite in love. And it will surely begin with the ability to think constructively from the position of I am a man, I am a woman, for the good of planet Earth.
Good. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for the conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.